We are living in the time and age when we are constantly, distracted by so many things, by tech, and it's extremely hard to pay attention to anything, because we are trained to enjoy short form content. Every team, every community, every classroom struggle with, making sure that everyone pay attention. It's more important now than ever to pay attention to engagement.
Welcome to the Product Agility Podcast, the missing link between agile and product. The purpose of this podcast is to share practical tips, strategies, and stories from world-class thought leaders and practitioners. Why, I hear you ask? Well, I want to increase your knowledge and your motivation to experiment so that together we can create ever more successful products. My name is Ben Maynard, and I'm your host. What has driven me for the last decade to bridge the gap between agility and product is a deep-rooted belief that people and products evolving together can achieve mutual excellence.
This week's episode sees us joined by Dave Bowie. Dave is the CEO of AhaSlides. AhaSlides is an engagement tool with over 1 million active users. It's been featured in Forbes articles regarding how technology can really help with productivity and engagement in the workplace. And Dave joins us to share the journey, the story of AhaSlides, how they scaled, what are some of the best tips, advice, nuggets of information that he can share with all of us to help us navigate our product, startup, or coaching journeys. Let's begin the episode. Welcome back to the Product Agility Podcast. Now, since the pandemic, getting together in the office or in any public space has been something we've had to get used to again. What we're finding in many organizations, many product and tech organizations, is that there is an engagement crisis. And what we're talking about here is, how do we get our teams engaged in what we're trying to do? How do we get people engaged in our conversations? How do we make sure that we are happy and that we are giving our all when we get together trying to solve problems, discover new product ideas, create a feature, whatever it may be? And this engagement crisis is something which is battling, or something we are all trying to battle in our product organizations. Now, this week, we're joined by a gentleman named Dave Bowie. Dave is a successful entrepreneur who in 2018, after this acquisition of his previous startup, stumbled across an idea, and there's something we're going to explore later, which resulted in AhaSlides. Now, AhaSlides is an engagement tool which is looking to revolutionize the way that people engage in conversations in their work. And Dave is a fantastic leader, product leader, CEO, who is going to be sharing with us some of the stories about how AhaSlides has scaled, about some of the motivation for creating it, perhaps some of the challenges and some of the wins along the way. And also, we'll be looking at maybe some of the juxtaposition, some of the tension between AhaSlides, which is a fantastic engagement tool for getting people to interact with each other remotely, but also balancing that with a understanding, a belief that actually getting people together, working in teams with real chemistry, with real emotion, is actually a fantastic thing to do. So, Dave, it's awesome to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me here today.
It's a pleasure. Now, the first question that I would like us to start with is, in 2018, when your original startup was acquired, how did you have the idea for AhaSlides?
Back then, as a startup founder, I usually had to do a lot of public speaking to the investors, at events, and to my own team. When I thought about what would make my presentation more exciting, I realized that there was a room for a tool or a product to enable engagement with the whole crowd easier by using their smartphone. And back then, I ran into similar products in the market, such as Kahoot and Mentimeter. And I thought my team can build something like that, but maybe a bit better, because I saw a bit of limitation in the current option in the market. So I thought, okay, let's go for this, because this is something that I would actually enjoy using on my own. And also, as someone who spent a lot of time, and I did care a lot about building strong teams and building strong chemistry, I realized and I appreciate the importance of engagement. So I thought, okay, this idea sounds good, something that I want to use myself. So let's go for it and see how it work. So we did build a product, and in a very short time, and we got very good positive signal from the market very early on. We had very early product market fit, and we had our first paying customer within just less than 6 months from writing the first live code. And then in 2020, 2021, COVID happened. The whole world changed its way of working, and we got an we got adopted by a lot of organizations and teams around the world. So it has been a very interesting and challenging and rewarding journey since then.
In a way, then, the pandemic was as terrible as it was a fantastic benefit to your product, because it forced people to search out tools which enabled them to get much more engagement in their workshops and their meetings. How much, you don't have to maybe give me numbers if you can do, but even as a rough guide, how much did your user base grow then over the pandemic?
The pandemic certainly has helped, not only for us, I believe, but for most tech products out there, in two ways. Number one, it pushed people to spend more time and effort into being together, because everyone was isolated from their homes. So every team, every organization, every community was looking for a way to reconnect, and most tech products were there to connect people better. So it was a huge push for a lot of tech products around the world. And secondly, I think there was a whole paradigm shift in terms of the way people perceive tech. Like every person we spoke to, they realized that it's time to change. It's time to change the way I do things. I spoke to prospect before pandemic, academics, people who did training, people who were lecturer and professor at university, and they thought, okay, you guys had a really good product, but maybe I try that later. But during the pandemic time, every customer came to us and said, I realize it's time to change. I'm a teacher, and I realize it's time for me to adopt new technology to teach better. I'm a team manager, and I realize that there's a better way to do team meetings, and so on. So I think it was a good time for tech product to be recognized and to be adopted across the world, all across the globe, in every country, every regions, every culture imaginable. You can see that huge change, that newfound appreciation for tech in helping bringing people together. So we did got a huge increase in terms of active users and active customer back then. But later on, when the pandemic faded away, actually what was surprising to us was that our active users didn't go down. Like, people still kept using AhaSlides. And I think, since we have a live engagement software solution, I think it showed that the needs for engagement hasn't gone down after the pandemic. People still want to engage their team members. Organizations still need their employees to speak up, to ask questions, to listen to each other more. So it's a great sign. Teams and organizations and bosses around the world realize that it's more important than ever to listen, and to make sure that you listen to everyone in your team.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How, the idea of engagement, and we went for so much of our lives pre-pandemic probably making do with pretty crap engagement in some of the things that we were running or some of the things we went through. And you're right, tech has enabled much greater engagement, and whether it's, I think, the prevalence of video conferencing tools, but also fantastic engagement tools such as yours. And if we then go back and reflect a moment, is that you stumbled across the idea for AhaSlides pre-pandemic. You were giving a talk and you were wondering if there's a way to get the crowd engaged in what you were sharing. And then you went and looked at some of the existing tools out there and thought, hold on, I think we could do this better. What I like, and what I always love, because I'm in a similar situation myself, is when the person that starts a company or starts a product idea is really tuned into the needs of the users. It's not like you've witnessed something, you think, oh, that person or that particular part of the market, maybe they could do with this. It's a need which you have, and then you take that need that you have, and then turn that into a product idea and elaborate on it, and then build a successful business based upon a need which you identified as your own target user. So I guess, David, you still use AhaSlides now to get engaged when you're doing
Yes,
public speaking?
absolutely. Internally, we run events and presentation on our slide all the time. Actually, we made a soft rule that no meeting should be held internally if you cannot ensure that everyone get to say, and also no one should speak for more than 7 minutes without asking someone else a question or letting someone else to chime in.
Great principles there, particularly the 7-minute rule. Is that something which you've built into your tool? Something on there which can
Not
time
really, but
people?
I think we try to show our users the benefit of asking questions. I think especially in this day and age, and this is something I want to mention as well. And this is not just because of the pandemic or the way people are working remotely nowadays, but also we are living in the time and age when we are constantly distracted by so many things, by tech, and it's extremely hard to pay attention to anything because we are trained to enjoy short form content. We are trained to check our smartphone or our mail every 5 minutes. Every team, every community, every classroom struggle with making sure that everyone pay attention. I think it's more important now than ever to pay attention to engagement. Back then, you didn't have to worry about it that much. Like if you are a teacher and you have a classroom, then every student would be in the physical classroom and they won't have their smartphone. So you have a monopoly on attention. Whatever you say, they're going to listen to it. Nowadays, no, that's not the case anymore, right? Because they have their smartphone. If you teach online, then they can mute, they can turn off their camera, and you're not even sure if they paid attention to you. Yeah, I spoke to a lot of our customers, and they all share the same concern. They dread the silence. They dread the Zoom mute, the black screen. And this is not because they want to control the audience. They just want to make sure that everyone moves the same way and the meeting is not waste because it takes everyone time to come together. Yes, but it's now more difficult than ever because we are trained, our brain is trained to pay less attention to everything. Not to mention the younger generation when they grew up with tech. A lot of our customers are actually bosses and managers in their 30 and 40s, and they want to engage with their entire team, including the Gen Z team members, and they need to find a better way to engage their team. Our product, which happen to address that need, is being used by a lot of teams for that kind of purpose.
The issue with engagement has been going on for decades. I think it's amplified by the shorter attention spans. There's a great thing I saw or listened to a few years back saying like mobile phones, it's just like gambling. Every time you check your phone, is like, have I won the popularity contest? Does someone like me? We constantly check our devices and things just to get some kind of dopamine rush to say that we belong or that someone likes us. It's brutal. I think when we go back into traditional classrooms, and I think I go back 30 years when I was at school, and even through university a little while after that, the method of education was very much as many people in the classroom as you can get away with, give them all the same information, people sit down and copy down what's being said. And the research into how the brain operates and how we learn has never said that is the optimal way of learning. I think we learn in spite of a general lack of engagement. And when we think of the teachers or the managers, the people that engaged us, and we think, wow, they did a fantastic job. Yeah, at bringing me, furthering me, bringing our class along, at engaging me and helping my career. They were the ones that engaged us in a way that wasn't just sit down and listen to what I have to say and look at a whiteboard or a chalkboard, show my age there, and copy what was written up. And I think this is where something which I'm very keen on is training from the back of the room. And a guest we had on the podcast about a year ago, a lady called Jodie Dirksen, who is an advocate, actually, that's designed for how people want to learn. And the key thing for learning is always, I think, and it always has been, we just missed it, is short chunks, high engagement. Make it different, make it engaging. Give people a reason to pay attention, and then can constantly give people a reason to pay attention by asking them what they think, by asking them for their reaction. And I think this is where maybe we're reaching an age of increased enlightenment because tech is such a great enabler to get some of that deeper engagement. So jumping off from there, you mentioned some of your clients there, and on your website, you got quite a list of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Impressive clients of AhaSlides. Are we okay to mention some of those
The
clients?
one that we put on a
Yeah.
website, you can mention.
But I didn't know if it's a mistake. Don't want to have any surprises. So you got the National University of Singapore, University of Tokyo. You got Bosch, and interestingly, and I think particularly for some of our listeners in the States, you got MIT. And MIT, that's a big name.
I want to clarify that we have customers who come from those organizations who use us like within their professional capacity.
These are enlightened educators and facilitators who have chosen your tool, and you've got over 900,000 active users.
Yes, I believe the number is more than that now.
That's a phenomenal number of people. So when you had the idea and you got your first customer from writing the first line of code to 6 months later, first paying customer, the pandemic is hit and you saw a fantastic growth, some strong people from great organizations using your tool. How have you dealt with that growth? When you were, and you mentioned before we started recording, you got a big love of agile and teamwork and getting people together and the power of that team. How have you found it then, going from, I'm guessing at the beginning, maybe you wrote some of those first lines of code, Dave, from starting off very small to then scaling up. How have you been able to stay nimble and adaptable as you've done that?
That's a great question. I think the first challenge is to scale the system, to keep the lights on. The second challenge is to scale up the operation, to make sure that you answer every email, every chat request, every inquiries, every complaint. And the third challenge is to scale up the team. With the first challenge, thankfully, I have some very talented engineers in my team. So we made some good decisions early on. And in this day and age, you can rely a lot on cloud hosting platform. As long as you know how to utilize them, then I think that's greatly reduce the burden of small young startup as they scale up. With operation, we try to stay as lean as possible. We try to keep the software simple and low touch so that we don't have to deal with too many inquiries and answering way too many questions and so on. But with this regard, I think the startup ecosystem nowadays is so much better than 15 years ago in terms of handling online requests, automating inquiries, and automating payments and finance and so on. So most of the challenge was with the last one, scaling up the team. Unfortunately, this is something that you have to do on a human basis. You cannot rely on tech entirely, which is fine, which is actually great. I actually dread the day when half of your team is not human, and I hope that it won't arrive too soon. But yes, we run into quite a few challenges when it comes with scaling up our team. Everything was decided quickly when you have a small team. But when you have 2, 3, 4, 5 engineering teams working in parallel on the same system, on the same code base, and you run into problems. It was easy when everyone have a say and everyone can contribute to how the product is built. But when you have a lot more members and you have to deal with solving accountability, responsibility, making sure that people have autonomy, but then at the same time have a good sense of accountability for every decisions and so on. And also with prioritizing what to do, because the backlog, it grew up fast. Every year we run a mandatory operation of removing all the items in the backlog that haven't been touched on for after a certain number of days and so on. So we try our best to stay lean, but then we also run into a lot of challenges, a lot of sleepless nights to make sure that everything runs smoothly and the team still scale up nicely and we don't lose the core value that we build, what got us here. But also we must be ready for the next stage of growth. And I think the human aspect is the most challenging aspect compared with the tech, the system, the infrastructure, and the operational aspect. I think the human, when you build up your team, you have new members and so on.
So you were saying that the scaling challenges is not so much the tech anymore because we can embrace cloud and there's lots of modern technologies which make that easier. It isn't so much the operational financing that aspect of it, because we can deal with so much of that now through the software. What we're saying here is that the challenge that you found with growing our AhaSlides has been the human and the team element of making sure that teams are still motivated, that they're engaged, that they're working on the highest value item. You said that on a annual basis, you will go through the backlog and remove things that are above a certain age to keep yourself really lean, which I think is a fantastic tip. I think that it's a great takeaway there for people to, on a periodic basis, make sure your backlog is lean and that there is as much as possible like a laser focus on what it is you're trying to achieve. So if you had to think to your questions or advice to give your younger self, right? You go back a year or two and you had to give yourself a couple of tips, like 2 or 3 tips or ideas as to how to navigate this scaling journey more effectively. What tips would you give your previous self?
That is a really good question. I don't think I have a particular regret, if that makes sense, in terms of what I have done in the past. Maybe this one, which is that I should have started way earlier. If you're on the right track, you will wish that you started that a year or 2 years earlier. In terms of my journey with building the AhaSlides team, I guess I would tell my younger self to be even more aggressive. I'm not sure if aggressive is the right word, in getting the right talent, in getting the best people to join the team even early on. And sometimes you tend to push that a bit later, because like we were a bootstrap company, so we thought, okay, let's go with that's good enough hires for now and save the superstar hires for later when you raise a couple millions from the VC and so on. But I thought my advice would be to go for the very best from beginning, because it could help you immensely to have talented people in your team and set up to make the first early decisions right. And also, if your idea, if your problem, the problem you're trying to solve doesn't bring enough value for you to be confident that you can hire the best people for the job, then maybe that's not such a great idea. So I guess that's what I would tell my younger self, to just get the best people, build the best team as you can. If in the mission, in the problem that you're solving, that if it's worthwhile to solve.
I think that's a fantastic piece of advice. I think it's too easy to go for, I don't know, settle for less than the best when you're just keen to get started. Yeah. I think it's a trap.
Have a lot of founders, friends, and people came to me and said, hey, I'm just looking to outsourcing it to somewhere else to save on the cost on the product, and I'm going to improve that later and so on. But yeah, if you really believe that it worth solving, then I think it deserves the best minds that you can practically find to build it.
So Dave, when we're talking about getting the best, right, that is fantastic advice, but also I think can lead people down all manner of different avenues in their minds as to what the best is. Because we mentioned the importance of teams and that magic of team chemistry before we started the recording. There's something we'll pick up like shortly and talk about the importance of being part of a team. But you also want great product creation professionals, people who can write great code, great UX people. You need those fantastic skills. So I think for some, they could think, hey, the best means let's just get the shit hot devs. Let's get shit hot, excuse my language, at UX people, and let's just go for those. But they're not team players. So for you, what is it that makes up a really fantastic hire?
I think it's important to highlight the team factor as well, because you can get an engineering genius and you can get a very talented designer, but it doesn't mean that you're going to have a good team. So I think my approach has been think of the dream team, the best team that I ever been in my career, and try to build a team that is close to that. I'm fortunate enough to be in as a member of some really great team in the past. So I thought, okay, I used to be in a team like this. So if I have to build a team on my own, it should be at least at that level. And also, I read stories and books about amazing teams in the history of tech, and I try to build teams that have similar traits to that. So when I said make the best hire, find the best people, what I meant was to so that you form a very strong team, and not just to get individuals. Sometimes you have to make the tough decision of whether you get a really brilliant team member, a really brilliant engineer, but isn't so fond of working in team, or a less brilliant engineer who has a good proven record of being really good with working in a team, especially through hardship. And usually I tend to prefer the former, the second, the latter option, because you want a strong team. Obviously, you need to have very capable team members, but then what is also important, and I would argue that is even more important, is to have strong team players.
But you mentioned some books that you read about building great teams. Can you remember
I read
any of
plenty.
those
I think
books?
there are plenty of books like that, Creativity Inc. by the founder of Pixar. I love that one.
Yeah.
Leader Eat Last by Simon Sinek. I think that's a very impactful book read to me, and a bunch of other. I love the story of Steve Jobs back in early days when he built his Macintosh team and his iPod team and so on. The chemistry was so strong. People can work with their 100% of their heart to achieve the shared mission. And books about sport teams really help as well. Like I read all about Sir Alex Ferguson books on how he built Manchester United team. I think I learned a great deal from managing a sport team. I think there's a lot of similarities. At the end of the day, we are all humans and we have certain tribal instinct. And humans collectively we can build great things together, no matter whether it's in sport or tech. So there's a lot to learn from history as well.
I really was surprised that you mentioned Alex Ferguson's book because I'm not a huge sports fan. And for those of you that aren't aware, Alex Ferguson was the manager of the football team Manchester United for a very long time through a rather unprecedented kind of decades of success for the club. And I find that fascinating that you say that there's a lot to learn from his book. I'm going to buy it because I remember some of the stories about Alex Ferguson, and you look at some of the amazing individual superstars that he had on the team, but he would never let the superstar get in the way, and he was never almost afraid to get rid of the superstar for the benefit of making a great team. And I think I had never considered as a comparable story for what we talk about in kind of product and product agility.
Yeah, I think he taught us, his readers, a lot of things. But I think if you have to distill his many years of amazing success to one sentence, then if we ask him now, I'm sure his answer would be, no one is bigger than the club. And as easy as it may sound,
Yeah.
it's not easy to actually making sure that it's always the case, as we can see even in professional football nowadays and in teams all around the world. I think that very important principle, and you need a lot of determination, a lot of skill, and a lot of willpower, a lot of to uphold to that very important rule number one.
It's making me think about the episode with a gentleman named Amir Kaplan, and I asked him how he became the lead product person for I think at the time it was for an old video chat tool called, which had, we're going back a long time, for 400,000 active daily users on this kind of WhatsApp tool. And I said, so how did you become so successful? How did you reach these kind of higher heights? And he said part of it was he never saw it as his product. He saw it as everyone's product and tried to imbue some of that sense of purpose and determination and the drive and the will for success into the people, so that the people work together to help achieve that purpose, to make the product a success. And so if I think about what you're saying there, is some of the what is the best people, how do you make the best team? It's getting them engaged, making sure you've got the right balance of the right people, so that even if somebody perhaps isn't the best individual, if they're a great team player and they're willing to learn and they feel like the product is theirs and people on the team are aligned to that higher purpose, and then they know that if they work together they're more likely to succeed at that collective mission, then that's a huge benefit to an organization. And I suppose then also that helps you overcome some of those kind of challenges that come about when you scale, about your ability to change direction and adapt and find new product ideas and get that alignment. So would you say that some of this, looking to build the best team, really having people believe in, and I'll use the term of your newsletter here, the joy of engagement, that has helped you scale?
Yes, I think when you have a team that believes that they can, and when they have a high level of autonomy, then things naturally become easier to scale up than if you try to build a team with strong control measures and everything has to come top down or something like that. Then it's actually a lot harder to scale up than having teams when people can make decisions quickly on their own. There's clear accountability, there's clear autonomy, and people know exactly what their problem, the problem that they need to solve, and they have all the resources in hands to make decisions quickly. Then it makes things easier to scale. One thing I particularly like about the Scrum framework is that it provide you with a blueprint, so you don't have to think too much about it, but you just follow certain practices in Scrum. And when you do that, then you, after a year, 2 years, you have a team or multiple teams who have built into their own second nature that this is my decision, the backlog is mine, and if I have a problem, I can share it with my team. My problem is my team problem, and vice versa, and that sort of thing. So after you run Scrum for a while, you have that kind of culture, and it makes, I believe that it makes it easier to scale up your team, especially in a very fast moving, no rule, no formula that you can copy from, like the world tech. There's no formula, there's no blueprint for me to build my organization around it. So yeah, it has been very useful, from very simple things like the daily stand up when everyone get to say what is blocking them, from retrospective meeting, because I, surprisingly enough, some of the engineer who joined the team said that this first time that they actually get to say what has made them sad over the last sprint. That sort of things really helps in, after a while, to build a culture of sharing and giving everyone a good sense of ownership of the common problem, the common challenge.
So much I want to say. I think it's amazing, isn't it? I think that the retrospectives and that reflection about trying to find ways to just to speak your mind and what's made what has made you sad, what do you want to improve? I think that organizations that have a strong purpose find it easier to have effective retrospectives. I don't think that the key to any of this is the key to a continuous improvement. I don't think it's retrospection. I think that's quite short-sighted. I think the key to continuous improvement is high alignment on purpose and that belief that what you're trying to achieve is worthwhile. Retrospection then is just a frame to allow you to get better to achieve the goal. But it all starts for me with that alignment on the purpose and that drive to want to succeed together, which but for the sounds of it, that's what you've got there. What I'm curious is how many teams do you have at the moment in AhaSlides, like working on the creation of
We
the
have 3
product?
product teams working in parallel at the moment.
And are they all working from one back? Yeah, okay. Because I think that helps with the alignment
Yes.
on purpose. I think it gives a much broader systemic optimization. And I know that when we started talking a long time ago, but large scale Scrum did come into the conversation. And I think that's one of the greatest things that large scale Scrum as a school of thought can provide is the idea of a single backlog and having teams work from the single backlog, which is just a Scrum idea. But I think many people dodge that and they give teams individual backlogs. And then as a product person, as a CEO, it's very hard to steer when everyone's got their own backlog and a certain degree of autonomy over exactly what goes on it. So I think that single backlog is a great kind of orientation point
And
to get that
come from
alignment.
a practical point of view as well, because it's not easy. Sometimes it's impossible to divide the system into separate backlogs, separate modules, so that teams can work without knowing what other team are working on. Like, this just make things more complex, more verbose, because you have to define the system based on the way you structure your people, and that makes no sense. The system should be designed based on the customer requirements, based on how it works, not based on how you structure your own team. So I think having the same backlog is make it easier. Sometimes you still have to flag them, like there's certain that you don't want a team to having to switch context every sprint, right? So you want them to work on in a certain team, so that they can be more invested into that team and they don't have to switch from one context to another. So you certainly don't want them to have a lot of context switching every sprint. But then at the same time, you also want to promote the idea of, okay, once in a while, you're gonna do something else, something a bit different, something that the other team has been working on, but now they're going to pass on to you. And also we promote swapping team members as well. We promote swapping members every once in a while. And we have what we call hackathon sprints, when we break all the team structure and everyone can just do whatever they like. So that's when people get to work with other team members who they never work with, to promote more communication, more interactions.
Interesting. I would put that in the on the list of good advice. You want teams to be together for a while, but that doesn't mean that there's never any movement. It doesn't mean that, actually, if I tie what you're saying is that, one, teams need to work together. If you're working on the same product, you're going to have dependencies. And those dependencies you can pretend to get rid of by structuring things in a certain way, but you're just shifting them to other people. You're shifting that burden of coordination, of communication to somebody who isn't actually part of the team, which just slows things down. So if the teams are going to be working on the same product, and as a consequence they need to be talking to each other and communicating, then finding ways like your hackathon sprints to break down some of those communication barriers and help people engage with each other and build the relationships means that they're more likely to then go and talk and maybe seek different experiences in other teams over time, because it's a great way to optimize the whole, not just the part. So then I'm wondering, Dave, you know a lot about how this is working. Are you the type of CEO then who goes along to every stand-up, or have you found another way to engage with your teams?
It's impossible to attend every stand-up, I'm afraid. Every sprint, at the end of the sprint, we would run a product demo session. So every team would show off what they have built to the whole company. And it's run in an open space format, so everyone can join in the physical office as well as on Slack. We use Slack internally for communication. So that's when everyone can see what the team has been building. And obviously, since everything is logged online, I can just, if I'm curious, I can, what team has been working on certain things. But yeah, no, I certainly don't have time to attend every stand-up.
But no, it was a lame joke. But it's one of those classic videos, isn't it? When the stand-up goes wrong, when the CEO is there, information to the teams.
I do the stand-ups, the daily stand-up a lot, because it's a good start to the day. We usually do it as the first thing in the morning, and it helps for people to exchange information quickly. And not everything can be explained as a ticket or as a chat message. So sometimes all it takes is to see the body language, the expression of your team member. I think it's a very good thing that we're doing every day here.
Dave, our time together is getting towards the end, I would say. We'd like to try and keep our episodes 30 to 45 minutes, but I want to spend some time just recapping and exploring like one more thing, because we've spoken about the inception of the engagement tool, which is AhaSlides. We spoke about the pandemic, and then the a huge growth of the number of users that you have, getting close to, if not exceeding, 1 million users across the world, all using your tool to engage with each other, engage with the teams. We spoke about the scaling challenges and about the team and the human aspect to it, how modern world makes some things easy and some things harder. We also spoke about having a single backlog and the benefits of that, and keeping your backlog lean. And there's so much advice there, and so much. I think anyone that's wondering how you go from a single team to a handful of teams, there's so much for people to take away there. Now, if I'm going to address the elephant in the room, what it sounds like, and what I'm at least inferring, is that you've got a lot of your teams together physically in the office. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
If I was going to play devil's advocate and say that you've got this engagement tool, AhaSlides, a fantastic and worthwhile alternative to Mentimeter, and you've got that, and you still get people in the office. Why have you made that decision? Given the fact that your business is getting people to engage remotely, why have you chosen to get your teams in the office?
Yeah, first of all, a very small correction on the number of sign-up users. Actually, we exceeded 1 million users quite a while ago.
Oh, look at that. Humble brag there.
That's a very small thing. And back to your question.
It's not a small thing, Dave. It's a very big thing. It's a lot of humans. Congratulations.
We will stop until every human being knows about us and us like a try with the next gathering. But back to your question, we are a hybrid team. So we do work from home or remotely, and we do have team members from other cities in other countries. So not everyone is being at the office all the time. Let me speak for myself here. I believe in in-person interaction. Even though I'm a tech person, I don't think technology should replace traditional old school face-to-face interaction, especially when it comes to engagement. Because we are, at the end of the day, we are social animals. We need to feel the sense of belonging. We need to feel like we are being together with other team members or people who we of our tribe, of people who share the same mission. We need to feel that sense of presence, of being together. And technology has taken some huge leaps forwards when it comes to bringing people together, but right now it still doesn't actually reflects reality. Yeah, I would recommend every team that strongly believe in their mission to spend some time together physically. And when you cannot do that, then obviously you have to do it online, and online is fine as long as you can see each other, you can hear each other. But yeah, but do spend some time in person once in a while, once every 3 months if you can, once every month if you can, or one every week if you can, but don't too far away from that. And this is not only for the bottom line of the company, it's for your own mental well-being as well. There's had been plenty of research and study on how when we don't feel engaged, then we don't feel happy, we don't feel satisfied, and we need that. We need a sense of purpose, we need a sense of belonging. And when you spend 7-8 hours a day for working, you certainly need to feel a sense of belonging there. Don't estimate on that. I know it's the norm now to work remotely, but don't work in isolation, if that makes sense. And for team leaders and team managers out there, do spend time in person with your team. I think I read a story about the founder or CEO of Atlassian, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And he last year got a truck and he drove around the coastline of Australia to visit his offices and his team members in person. And I think that's a great idea. Spend time together. Phone calls and chat, they're all good, but do spend time together with your colleagues, with your teammates, with your family members, with the people who you care about, people who you share some common interests with, people who you share the same mission, and so on. So I think human interaction, I believe strongly that human interactions are here to stay, and the role of technology is to enhance that, not to replace that. And it will be a very sad world if we all work remotely 100% of the time and never see the people who you work with in person. Video calls, they're fine. The quality is getting better and better every day. You get so much more information, so much more emotion when you're close to someone. A lot of our users are using our slide for online events, but then we also saw a portion of events being hosted in the same place by people who coming from the same location. So it works well online, in person, and with remote hybrid events. And we intend to keep it that way. We intend for the tech not to replace the traditional human interaction, and that's come and so sometimes it reflected in our design decisions. For example, we try to make the screen on the participant phone to be as engaging as possible, but never to take away their attention from the presenter. So as the person who runs the show, you should look at the speaker, you should look at your teacher, you should look at the person who is on stage or who doing the talking, and not at the phone all the time. So we wouldn't try to replace in-person interaction.
That was a beautiful section there, and I think it's a lovely way to bring the episode to a close. What you were saying there has really made me think about some interesting ways to do things in a hybrid manner. So if you're delivering a talk remotely, actually using our AhaSlides to get people collaborating and working together in a room. And there's some really interesting things I think you could do, actually. Thank you for that. I'm going to be experimenting at some point. Dave, it's been an absolute joy to have you on the podcast
Thank you,
for
man.
this episode. Shared some fantastic
I
advice.
hope it helps.
I believe it will help, and it raises awareness of your tool as well, which I would really encourage people to give a go. AhaSlides is my go-to engagement tool. I found it, for me personally, I found it slightly more enjoyable to use. And I was always really surprised and rather pleased at how quickly you were adding new features and trying new things with it. So yeah, you've got my custom. And I suggest that people give it a go because I think it is a fantastic tool. Dave, before we wrap up, is there any final thoughts or anything you would like to share with our listeners?
I have shared quite a lot of thoughts.
You have shared a lot of thoughts. If you haven't got one, Dave, it's fine.
Yeah,
It's fine.
have a great day to whoever listening, and enjoy the moment, enjoy the people and the your surrounding. Enjoy your day. I think that's, if on top of my mind right now, that's what I want to say. Just enjoy enjoy the moment.
Great. We'll take that with me as I embark upon my day. With my day is just beginning, you're in Hanoi, your day is coming to an end. Dave, thank you very much for that. Everyone, thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back again next week.